to today's webinar focusing on the topic importing material and machinery. Our special thanks to Mr. Dinesh Kumar Agarwal from Khaitan & Co for collaborating with us and sharing their expertise on this topic. We received several queries related to importing material and machinery to India, including custom clearances, procedures, duty structures, COVID-19 impact, and key enablers to ensure smooth and timely transition. This webinar will provide you transparency on India's custom procedures, duty structure, import models, impact of COVID-19 on import clearances, and best practices to avoid cost time overruns. Friends, as you all know, this webinar is a part of series of webinars we organize under the Make in India Mittelstand program. The MIIM program was initiated by Embassy of India Berlin in 2015 to convert the intent on part of the German businesses into actual investments in India. The program is India's red carpet for the German Mittelstand. The program is run on behalf of our embassy by our knowledge partner Euro Asia Consulting, supported by a network of competent partners such as Rodelin partner Khaitan & Co as tax and legal partners, IGCC as a partner chamber, Deutsche Bank, KfW DEG, and SBI as financing partners, and Global Innovation and Technology Alliance of CII as technology partner. Invest India, the official government agency for investment promotion, and 9 Indian state governments are also partner to this program. They assist us with regulations and permission issues to facilitate investment. The program partners offer expert services in the fields of investment consulting, tax and legal, financial services, and project financing for the market entry and expansion. MIM also provides free of cost benefits of special workshops, networking, and information exchange. MIM program has completed its 6th year in August 2021, achieving 151 companies and facilitating a declared investment of Euro 1.46 billion. We welcome German companies to take advantage of the services provided under this program for their planned investment or expansion in India. With that, I would like to wish you all interesting and fruitful discussions. We will share the presentations and our contact details with all after the webinar. Please feel free to connect with us if you are interested in Indian market or have some doubts regarding your investment plans in India. Thank you, and over to you, Mansi.
Thank you, Mr. Chauhan. To move on, I would like to tell all the ladies and gentlemen that if you have any questions during the presentation, please send it across to us via chat option on your right-hand side. These questions will be addressed during the Q&A session in the end. To begin with, let me introduce today's speaker to you, Mr. Dinesh Kumar Agarwal. He is a partner and who is co-heading Indirect Tax and Regulatory Practice at Khaitan & Company. He is qualified chartered accountant and cost accountant. He has worked with Indian Customs for 16 years in senior position, and for past 15 years, he has been associated with Khaitan & Company, and he has been assisting domestic and foreign clients. His main area of expertise include cross-border transactions, handholding of multinational companies during their India entry plans, trade control and sanctions, and trade protection measures. Being a prior revenue officer, Mr. Agarwal has expertise in assisting clients in ring fencing and handling regulatory investigations as well. The Legal 500 recognizes him as a leading tax lawyer. Now, I would like to request Mr. Agarwal to start sharing his presentation. Over to you, Mr. Agarwal.
Thank you, Manish, and thank you, Mansi, and good morning to everyone who is attending this interesting seminar on customs duty. I'm going to share my presentation. I believe that presentation is visible to everyone. Mansi, can you confirm?
Yes, it is visible, Mr. Agarwal.
Thank you. So today we are going to have some time spent on briefing you about the customs clearance procedure, valuation under customs, duty structure, exemption and subsidies, import regulatory regime, digital interference, key enablers, and how India is doing for easing the doing of business and COVID-19 measures which has been put in place by Government of India. And then I'll also briefly touch upon the customs best practices so that whenever any cross-border transaction takes place, then it goes through without any problem. So as India is having very robust customs control, which are the protector of our boundary, so there are certain prerequisites are there for any import, whether it's import of goods or material or capital goods or machinery. So everyone who is importing goods must have a IEC number, that is Importer Exporter Code number, which is issued by the Director General of Foreign Trade, and GSTN number, that is for the business registration in India. And precursor of these two is PAN number, which is issued by the Income Tax Department. Then every import is required to comply with Indian foreign trade law, which is in the form of foreign trade policy, as well as many other laws which impacts import and export of goods and services. Then India is a signatory of the World Customs Council and has adopted HSN, that is Harmonized Nomenclature, System of Nomenclature for classification of goods. So all the goods which gets imported into India requires to be properly classified under an appropriate HS heading. And transaction value is also important because India is a signatory of the World Trade Organization, and precursor to that was GATT agreement. So as per GATT and WTO agreement, India accepts transaction value for the purpose of customs duty, but then there are some issues which we need to address. So that I will also cover in next slide. At the time of import, every importer is required to file a bill of entry with the customs authorities, making certain declarations with respect to what is the description of the goods, what is the value, what will be the classification and rate of duty which is intended, and all these business registrations also need to be indicated. Then along with that, if there is any import permit is required or if any clearance is required for any other agency, that also needs to be attached. Then it goes through the assessment process. There are multiple assessments are there. So either it can be self-assessed where goods goes through without customs examination, or it can be picked up for a detailed assessment, or it could be only examination, depending on various parameters which are fed into risk management system, which is entirely an automated system which is implemented at the ports. So risk management system, or RMS, evaluates risk profile of every product, every customer and every supplier and the country also, and based on that a decision is taken as to whether cargo can be released under the green channel method or requires a thorough scrutiny. Once assessment is there, you need to pay bill of duty and then remove the goods from the customs area. Wherever there is a difficulty in respect of dispute or difficulty in respect of classification, or there is a valuation dispute is there, then as per the provisions of the Customs Act, it can be released for provisional assessment where goods are released upon certain surety and bonds, and then based on the subsequent investigation or submission of document, assessment can get finalized. So this is the broad contour which is applicable for import of all goods and all goods, whether it's raw material, component, part or machinery. So I believe that this is a standard procedure, and most of the participants will be aware of the basic contours for the customs clearance. I come to a specific area of interest, that is with respect to valuation, because valuation is one aspect which is most of the importers has to face this task. So usually, as I said, that India is a signatory of the World Trade Organization, and therefore GATT valuation norms, which accepts transaction value as the accessible value for levy of customs duty, that is being implemented by India, and your invoice value will be generally accepted until unless there are reasons to warrant its rejection. Now, before we rely on the invoice value as a transaction value, we also need to look at certain other parameters. One of them is that it should not be a transaction between related parties. I mean to say, when we say related parties, then if a subsidiary of a German company is importing goods into India, then that subsidiary is a related party to the exporter, and therefore to that extent, since there is a relationship, transaction value, invoice value will not be accepted at transaction value until unless it is demonstrated that it's a arm's length pricing. So perhaps you may have dealt with these issues in income tax also. There is a transfer pricing regulations are there. So these regulations are also akin to transfer pricing regulations, where you need to demonstrate that the declared value is at arm's length. And how do one demonstrate? So there are some parameters are there, or yardsticks are there. So one yardstick is transaction between unrelated party for identical or similar goods. So if German company has been also exporting to other unrelated companies in India or somewhere else, then that can be produced as evidence that my price is not influenced because of the relationship. Now, if that there may be a possibility where company exporter may not be supplying goods to any other player, and it may be exclusively supplied to the Indian subsidiary only. In that case, the value will not be available for the identical or similar goods. In that case, there is a possibility of demonstration of arm's length pricing by showing on the basis of cost of manufacture that this is my cost of manufacture, and based on that, what price I am charging to Indian subsidiary is correct, because I'm earning still a reasonable amount of profit. Now, if cost of manufacture is very difficult to cumbersome and not possible, and if the item which is going to be imported is for the trading purpose, then another method is the deductive value. In this method, we can take the sell value of the importer in India as the starting point, and from there we can exclude selling expenses, reasonable profit, and then come to what should be the landed price, and from there we can try to arrive at the import value. And if that is also not possible, then there is a residual value there which is left to customs authority, and they will, based on all the factors considering, will decide what should be the price. So if there is any import is there from a related party, whether it's a raw material, whether it's a brand new machinery, or whether it's a second-hand machinery, this is a paramount consideration. Now, apart from the invoice value, whatever is stated, there are some items are there which also needs to be looked at as to whether these are already part and parcel of the invoice value, or there is a additional payment pertaining to this, which are something like commission and brokerage, cost of durable containers, cost of packing. So if these are already included into the value of invoice, then there is no worry. But if there is a separate payment is there, then we need to include value for those goods, services also. FOC supply is free of cost supply, where Indian company is supplying some material, some tools, jigs, etc. to the foreign supplier, which gets incorporated or used in the export product. Then value has to be apportioned, and that also needs to be added. Royalties and license fee. This is one interesting area where if the Indian importer is required to pay any royalty or license fee to the exporting company or any other company because it's a condition of sale, and without that the supplies will not happen, then that also needs to be added to the accessible value or invoice value to arrive at the transaction value. Then any other payment which is made as a condition of sale. So all, and freight and insurance. So these are the things which If already not considered, then we need to consider and bring it on board. There is a special valuation branch is there, which is a specialized agency which looks after transaction between related parties. So at the time of first import and on every subsequent import, you need to declare as to whether it's a import from the related party. And if it is an import from related party, then on first import, it will be referred to special valuation branch. There a file number will be generated and you have to make provisional assessments of the bill of entry, because your value is not final. It will be finalized after investigation. So there will be a provisional assessment, and on every subsequent import, you need to also mention this SVB order, which says that it has to be provisionally assessed, and then you can clear it. If any failure is there with respect to missed declaration on relationship, it may result in penal provisions. Now, this is normal import where there is no difficulty and people are importing regularly raw material, capital goods, so and so. We have a special regime or difficulty with respect to import of used or second-hand machinery. So presently, used or second-hand machinery can be imported without any import restrictions. Means it can be imported as if it's coming as a new machinery. But then valuation is always a big challenge, because these are not normally traded in market. They are second hand. So every machine has got its unique qualities, is for which it has been used, depreciation, condition. So there is a special regime is there for valuation of the used machinery. Now, the requirement is that whenever there is a import of used machinery is taking place, the transaction value is to be accepted subject to what I have said. But then to check whether transaction value or invoice value is correct or not, department has devised a special procedure as per which every second-hand machinery is required to accompany a chartered engineer report from the load port. And if that report is not available at load port, then it will be referred to a impaneled chartered engineer at the port of arrival for examination. And when a chartered engineer is examining the goods, he has to produce his report in a prescribed format which is available, and that format essentially captures these details. The details are like original value or present value of the machine which is being imported, year of manufacture and age of machine, present working condition, book value and depreciated value, cost of reconditioning, refurbishment immediately prior to import, and depreciation overall. Government allows 70% depreciation. So if any machine is say older than 10 years, then also it must have a residual value of 30% of the original value or present value of the new machine. And based on these parameters, customs officer will decide as to whether the invoice value is approximate or is very near to the value which has been arrived under these conditions. And if he finds that value is near to the declared value, then he will accept it. Otherwise, he will reject the value, saying that value is not correct, and he will go on to determine value based on these parameters. So how it will work is that, let's say that if somebody is importing a second-hand machinery which is refurbished immediately prior to shipment, so and the machine age is more than 10 years old. So department will say that 30% of the value of the new machine should be the residual value, and then they will add cost of refurbishment and whatever internal freight cost is there, that also will be added, and then it will be arrived at a FOB value, on which again sea freight and insurance will be added, and on that value one has to pay customs duty. So there are set procedures are there as per which they will determine value of the second-hand machinery. Now, in case of import of refurbished or reconditioned parts, condition is that it must at least have a 80% of the residual life. So if residual life is say 50%, then it will require import license. If residual life is 80% or more, then no import license is required. In case of some other used capital goods such as IT goods, air conditioner, DG sets, scanners, photocopiers, these are not allowed for import without license. So if these are used capital goods, then you need an import license to import it. Once we have settled on on valuation and classification, which is based on HSN, then we need to look at the applicable customs duty. Applicable customs duty is set out in customs tariff. Schedule 1 of the customs tariff sets out the standard rate of duty as well as preferential rate of duty. And customs duty normally comprises of basic customs duty, social welfare surcharge, and IGST. IGST is integrated GST, which is equal to the amount of GST which is leviable on similar goods in Indian domestic supply. So usually our median rate of basic customs duty is 10%. Median rate of customs duty for machinery is 7.5%, surcharge is 10%, and IGST is 18%. So roughly that works out to, if you take BCD at 10%, then roughly total customs duty work out to about 30%. And if we take machinery at 7.5%, then it work out to something around 27%, out of which amount of IGST is available as an input tax credit. Now, there are different thematic and general exemptions are there. So like if somebody is importing for oil exploration, then those articles or whatever capital goods are getting imported, they can be imported without payment of any customs duty. Similarly, there are foreign preferential trade agreements are there with the various countries. So whatever rate is described over there, that will be considered while arriving at a effective customs duty. So you have to not only look at the customs tariff for the rate, but also relevant notification to arrive at the effective rate of customs duty which could be levied on the imported goods. Now, whether there is any capital subsidy is available on import of machinery. So customs department at the time of import do not provide any subsidy. There are some other kind of subsidies are available, like various state governments provide capital subsidy on import of machinery or on investment under their respective state industrial policy. So Maharashtra, Gujarat, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, every state has got its own industrial policy, and on that policy, when investment is going to the backward area, then some amount of subsidy is given. And those subsidies could be either investment linked or could be based on some other parameters. Then there are central government assisted policies are there when the investment is going to J&K or to Uttarakhand or to northeast areas, northeast states of India. Then there is a central government assisted policies are there where again incentives are given in form of capital subsidy. Then there is PLI, is there, production linked incentive scheme, where depending on the incremental investment and incremental production, certain incentives are given to the manufacturer. So these are different kind of subsidies are given, but they are not strictly for import of machinery, but these are for the investment for creation of the manufacturing capacity. There are certain export promotion schemes are there where which could be some under EOU scheme or SEZ scheme or under EPCG scheme, where goods can be imported at without payment of customs duty or on payment of very nominal amount of customs duty. But then essential feature of all these export promotion scheme is that the intent of import is to export goods. So if Indian subsidiary is going to be majorly exporting the outputs, then it makes sense for one to go at EOU scheme or SEZ scheme or even for EPCG scheme where plant and machinery can be imported without payment of customs duty subject to certain export obligations. If there is a import of machinery is there on rental basis or lease basis for the temporary purpose, then again customs duty is at a lower rate. So you are permitted to import without paying IGST, because on lease rental, whatever amount is there of lease, on that you have to pay IGST under the GST Act. In as much as customs duty is concerned, there will be prorated depending on the period of use. So temporary import is allowed for a period of 18 months, and then up to 40% duty of the duty which is otherwise leviable. Only 40% of the duty will be leviable on that. So if you are importing any capital goods or any plant and machinery for a period of 3 months, then rate of customs duty only 5% of the amount of duty which is leviable. And if the period increases, then this 5% increases depending on the slab rate, which goes up to 40%. If temporary import is there for a period more than 18 months, then you end up paying full customs duty. So these are some measures which are there for import of capital goods. Now, if we come to raw materials, then there are a host of regulations are there which we need to look at. And depending on the characteristics of the item, whether these items are food or chemical, or depending on whether these are animal product or plant origin product, various requirements kicks in, which could involve animal husbandry, plant quarantine, which could be FSSAI, drug and cosmetics clearance. So all these clearance will be looked at the time of import. For a large number of products, India has also mandatory BIS or IS standards. So everything which is coming and having a mandatory standard must comply with the prescribed standard. And for that, one importer has to get himself registered under the BIS certification scheme. Then in case of items which are having Wi-Fi capabilities or Bluetooth capabilities, their WPC clearance is required. In case of electronic items, again, BIS registration is required. So host lot of regulations are there which needs to be complied at the time of import. Now, Government of India over a period of time has created a large number of digital interface to reduce human intervention. So now the requirement of one-to-one or person-to-person going and approaching customs officer for assessment or for submission of document, that has been done away with under various automated system. So one of the system is ICES, where all import documents are required to be filed digitally. So we have bill of entries which needs to be filed digitally. Then eSanchit is another platform is there, which where you need to submit your import documents like bill of lading, invoice, packing list, description of the goods, or product brochure or catalog, everything under digitally under eSanchit software. Then now government from this year has also introduced faceless assessment, where there is no designated officer who will be assessing these goods. So earlier what used to happen is that there are HSN, there are 99 chapters are there, and their officers were there who were divided, these chapters were divided among them. So say 1 to 27 chapter was looked after by one particular assessing officer, and 28 was looked after by another assessing officer or assessment group. So there was a specific allocation was there. And then all those bills of entry were getting assessed at the port of entry. Wherever there was a custom house was there, only those officers were assessing it. Under the faceless system, once you have filed your bill of entry digitally, it can go to any custom officer sitting in any custom house. So even if you are importing your goods into say Chennai port or Mumbai port, your bill of entry may get assessed at Delhi port. So it's a faceless system without boundary. So you will not be knowing that who is the assessing officer, and officer also will not have a choice to interact with you. So it's entirely based on merit, entirely based on the documents which are submitted. So this is entirely a humanless, faceless assessment system is there. Then there is another forum is there, SWIFT. So as I was mentioning earlier, that different kind of items requires clearance from different departments. So animal quarantine, plant quarantine, drug controller, textile committee, then FSSI. So all this has been automated and bought under SWIFT. So as soon as importer files its bill of entry, depending on already the risk management system has different parameters. So if any food item is there, automatically it will go to plant quarantine as well as to the FSSI authority for clearance or no objection. So all this is automated, where now importer or their broker don't have to go from one desk to other desk. Rather, one single window will take care of all these clearances. But then prerequisite is that whatever licenses are required to be there, that must be enclosed and submitted in eSanchit. Only then SWIFT will be applicable. Otherwise, there will be objections, rejections, and consignment will get delayed. In terms of key enabler, government is again very trade friendly and coming out with new ideas to assist, help the trading community. So they have come up with the digital duty calculator, and by accessing this digital duty calculator, one can find out what is the applicable customs duty and how much duty is there on a particular product. Then there is a compliance gateway is there, compliance portal, where depending on the description of the goods or CTH or HS code, one can find out what a kind of compliance requirements is there, what are the licensing regimes are there. He has to approach which authorities for clearance, so that he knows beforehand that, okay, he has to get this kind of permits, clearances, and he gets ready for that. Then as a key enabler, there is a AEO scheme, is the Authorized Economic Operator scheme, where a lot of trust has been reposed on the trading community. So those who are registered as EEO, they are allowed to clear their goods without physical examination under green channel. And they are also in a position to enjoy deferred duty payment, where they don't have to pay duty at the time of each removal. Rather, they can have a running account and they can pay duty, say, once in a month. So that way, government is facilitating quicker clearance of imported cargo. Then there is record-based control on warehouse goods is there. Earlier it used to be physically controlled, now everything is record-based. So all these things shows that government is removing the excessive controls which used to be there. Government is reposing a lot of faith on the trading community, and government is coming as a facilitator, and everything is in transparent manner. So COVID measures are there. Because of the COVID, there was a restricted movement of persons were there from one place to other place, and therefore government has come out with large number of COVID measures related relief. One of them is relaxation on submission of bond for importer and exporter. So at the time of importer, as I was saying, that if it is a provisional import, then a provisional assessment, then one need to provide, say, provisional duty or surety. So in that case, government has said that, okay, you can submit it through through online, and the hard copy can be submitted later on. Same way, certificate of origin, wherever it's required, can be submitted digitally, and original copy can be submitted later. As I already said, that eSanchit is there, where paperless customs, so you don't have to submit most of the documents in physical form. E-sealing of goods is there, where if goods are sealed in your premises or in the exporter's premises, then it will be allowed to be released without customs clearance. So then e-hearings are there, wherever there is a dispute is there, or if cargo is stuck and we need to go and liaison with the customs officer, then there is a e-hearing is there, which is facilitated. So you can have virtual meetings with the officers, and then different kind of compliances were under different laws. So even that has been relaxed. Now coming to best practice, what should we do to keep our house in order So one is record keeping. We must have full record keeping because now there is a robust audit system has been put in place where importer is required to, it's not transaction based audit, now it's importer's premises based audit. So auditor will come and see the records, and therefore one has to keep all the records properly. Then exemptions or classifications that need to be properly vetted, and then one has to claim it. Regulation already I have explained to you that many of the items require compliance with various regulations, and therefore one to be very, very careful. Import valuation, which already I have discussed, is one of the most trickiest part of the entire thing, because customs duty is levied on the basis of value of the goods. So customs are much more inclined to verify, and therefore one has to keep all the valuation related documents. And supply chain analysis, because ultimately customs duty, whatever is being paid, is becoming a cost to the business, and therefore a robust and very effective supply chain is required to increase profitability and bottom line. So with that, I come to end of my presentation, and I think or believe that you must have enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, please free to ask, and I'll be happy to answer that. So Mansi.
Thank you, Mr. Agarwal. Thank you, Mr. Agarwal, for throwing light on different aspects of custom procedures, these measures taken by the government. I would like to tell all the participants that if you have any questions, then you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question. Meanwhile, we have received question from some of the participants. So I'll ask you, Mr. Agarwal, on behalf of the audience, that if a company has to provide classification in bill of landing as well as import documents, how does one go about determining the correct classification?
Mansi, classification is very technical in nature. As
Mr. Agarwal, you are on mute.
Can you hear me? Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah. So your question pertains to classification of goods.
Yes,
So
please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So classification is very technical in the sense that there is a customs tariff where everything which can be imported is classified under different chapters. And there are about 60,000 line items are there. And for various line items, duty rate differs. So one has to be very, very careful with respect to classification. Now, what are the tools of classification? So there is a description is there which is available under the Customs Tariff Act, like fabric. So there will be a classification of various kinds of fabric depending on its nature from chapter 50 onward. But then there are in fabric itself, there are more than say 5,000 entries are there. So how one classify under which chapter it will be appropriate. So there is a explanatory notes are there, which is released again by World Customs Organization, and there are guidance available there. Then there are classification circulars are there, which are issued by different ministries. Then there are case laws are there and judicial pronouncements, because again, as I said, that depending on the classification, rate of duty is determined. So it's not a straightforward thing, 2 plus 2, rather it's very technical. And therefore, what is required is that one has to be classifying product accurately in with full knowledge of its composition, its end use, its characteristics, and with the full knowledge of tariff. And for that, you always need an expert help. So either importing company or exporting company will be having their own expertise. And if there is any doubt is there, I always suggest to go for a consultant who can assist you in correct classification of these products. And again, once again, it's very relevant not only for the customs duty, but even for claiming of the exemption. So whether you want to pay appropriate customs duty or you want to claim exemption, your classification must be correct. Yes, Mansi.
Thank you, Mr. Agarwal. Meanwhile, other participants would like to understand that can they ship goods to India on consignment basis?
Consignment basis, I believe you are referring to where there is no sale of goods, rather you import goods, and if goods are getting sold, then you pay it to your supplier, and if goods are not getting sold, then you return back the goods to your supplier. That is normally we understood as a consignment basis import. Presently, consignment import is permitted only in case of gold and silver and no other commodity, and therefore you can't import goods or plant and machinery on consignment basis until unless it's merely gold. So presently, as I said, consignment basis import of other goods and raw materials is not permitted.
May I also put forward a question?
Yes, please.
Sure.
Yeah, Dinesh, thank you very much for your speech. Very good, very detailed. Of course, Ketan is well known as one of the leading law firms in India. But of course, you are not so well known also as a custom broker. So my question is, in day-to-day life, there are regular big problems with special valuation branch. If there is some trouble, can Ketan & Co. also help in these cases to sort out the difficulties with a special valuation branch? That was my question.
Yes, in fact, Ketan & Company has a very good indirect tax practice. Presently, we have 9 partners who cater to clients on customs and other indirect tax laws. And we deal with special valuation branch cases also on very regular basis. Unfortunately, as you said, that we are not very known because as a firm, corporate practice is much more visible. But we provide full services in customs also, and special valuation branch is also one of our big practice area. And we will be happy to assist you in that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Agarwal. Now there is one more question coming in, which is from the participant. He is asking, can you please shed some light on investigation procedures under customs? So could you please briefly explain that to everyone?
So investigation in customs is normally could be related to valuation or classification or wrong availment of notification benefit. Now there are specialized investigating agencies are there. So every custom house has got a intelligence and investigation wing that is called Special Investigation and Intelligence Department or branch. Then we have specialized DRI, which is a Directorate of Revenue Intelligence, which is a Pan India premier investigating agency. And you may have heard very recently that there was a big seizure of drugs at Bhuj Airport running into 27,000 crore rupees. So that was a seizure by DRI. Then there are different other agencies are there like DIU, that is Docks Intelligence Unit, and Air Intelligence Units, who are also investigating different kind of imports or contrabands. So multiple agencies are there who investigate these violations. And what happens is that they are empowered to conduct search and seizure. They are also empowered to summon people and record a statement under oath. So these investigations are mainly directed towards unearthing whether there is any contraband is getting imported or if there is any irregular import is there. And we as a firm also help a large number of clients in navigating these difficult investigations. So we liaison with the investigating agencies. We assist client in formulating strategies, and we also advise if client has done something wrong, which is like undefensible or there is actually a problem is there, then we also advise client what should be the best way to pay duty and how to mitigate the risk. So I think that investigation has to be, if wherever there is an investigation, and as special valuation branch is also a part of the investigation, where department investigate whether the relationship has influenced import price or not. So that also we deal with it, as I have clarified earlier.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Agarwal, for answering that question as well. Ladies and gentlemen, would you like to ask some more questions since we have some more time left with us? I don't see any more questions coming in. On the behalf of MIM team, I would like to thank everyone for joining today's webinar. If you have any further questions that might come to your mind later on, please send those questions to MIM hotline. That is mim@indianembassy.de. We will also be sharing today's presentation with you on the registered email ID that is with us. So thank you so much once again. Looking forward to welcome you for the future webinars, which will be hosted by MIIM. Thank you so much. Have a nice day ahead.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mansi. Thank you, Manish.